Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Aliens scanned a human warship. What they saw left broken silence. The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly around the Galactic Union vessel Seeker of Truth. The sleek, crystalline ship glided silently through the darkness, its blue-green lights pulsing gently as it approached the edge of charted space. Inside the command center, Observer Gray stood with his forearms clasped behind his back. His large eyes blinked slowly as he studied the main view screen. "Observer, we have detected an unknown vessel at coordinates 7 to 39, reported Navigator Blue, her tentacles dancing across the control panel. "It appears to be moving at sublight speed along the border of Sector 12. Observer Gray's skin shifted from pale green to a curious yellow. "Interesting. We have no record of any Union vessels scheduled for this quadrant. Could it be a trading ship that strayed from its course?" "Unlikely," said Security Officer White, his exoskeleton clicking as he moved closer to the screen. "The vessel's design matches nothing in our database. Its energy signature is unusual." Gray nodded slowly. "A new species, perhaps? This is most exciting. Prepare for first contact protocols and open a communication channel." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Over the past 3 centuries, the Galactic Union had encountered 17 different intelligent species, and the procedure was well established. Every new civilization was welcomed, scanned, and invited to join the peaceful coalition of planets that spanned this arm of the galaxy. "Channel open, Observer," said Communications Officer Purple, her voice melodic and calm. Gray cleared his throat. "Unknown vessel, this is Observer Gray of the Galactic Union ship Seeker of Truth. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact. Please identify yourselves." For several moments, silence filled the bridge. Then, a crackle of static was followed by a voice that sounded rough and strangely flat to the alien's hearing. "This is Captain Reed of the Earth vessel Defiance. We acknowledge your transmission and return peaceful greetings." The view screen flickered, and the image of a human being appeared. The bridge crew stared in fascination at their first view of a human captain. Reed had dark hair, cut short, above a face with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, common features across many species, yet combined in a way that seemed both familiar and alien. "I represent humanity and the United Earth Alliance," Reed continued. "We are on an exploratory mission to expand our knowledge of space beyond our home system." Observer Gray's skin rippled with a pattern denoting respect. "Captain Reed, we are pleased to make your acquaintance. The Galactic Union welcomes peaceful explorers. Would you permit a standard biological and technological scan of your vessel? This is our customary procedure when meeting new species, to ensure compatibility with Union protocols and to begin the process of cultural exchange." On the screen, Captain Reed seemed to consider this request. His face remained mostly still, showing none of the color changes or physical signals that Gray was accustomed to reading. "We would be willing to permit a basic scan," he said finally. "However, certain areas of our ship are restricted for security purposes. I hope you understand." Gray's skin flashed a brief pattern of confusion. "Security concerns during a peaceful first contact? Most species are eager to share all information." Despite this, he maintained his diplomatic demeanor. "Of course, Captain, we respect your boundaries. Our scan will only collect standard data about your ship's composition and your species, basic biology, nothing invasive." "Proceed with your scan," ordered Captain Reed. Seeker of Truth maintained its position. Science Officer Green activated the scanning array, her 6-fingered hands moving with precision across the control surfaces as she initiated standard first contact scan parameters set to level 2, respecting privacy restrictions. The scan beam, invisible to the naked eye, swept across the human vessel. Data began to flow into the Seeker's computers, filling multiple screens with information. At first, everything proceeded normally, with basic readings on hull composition, atmospheric content, and radiation levels. Then Science Officer Green made a strange chirping sound, a rare indication of surprise from her usually composed species. "Observer Gray, you need to see this," she said, her voice unusually tight. Gray moved to her station, leaning over to examine the readings. His skin rapidly cycled through colors, green to blue to a deep purple that his crew had rarely seen. "Run the scan again," he ordered. "There must be an error." Green repeated the scan. The results were identical. "What is it?" asked Security Officer White as he moved toward them with rapid clicks of his exoskeleton. Gray stared at the screen, then back at the image of the human ship. Defiance looked deceptively simple from the outside. A long, dark vessel with visible weapon ports and engine missiles. Nothing that would suggest the readings they were seeing from the humans. Gray began to speak, then stopped, struggling to find words. "Their biology is unlike anything we've encountered. The data shows creatures that could survive in conditions that would kill most Union species instantly. Their bones are reinforced with calcium deposits, making them incredibly durable. Their skin constantly regenerates, and their digestive systems can process substances that would be toxic to most sentient life. Most shocking of all, they contain traces of numerous pathogens, living in symbiosis within their bodies." Green continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "The weapon systems are extensive." White leaned closer to the screen, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "These readings can't be correct. This vessel wasn't designed for exploration. It's a warship." The bridge fell silent. In the 3 centuries of the Galactic Union, warfare between intelligent species had been eliminated. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation. The concept of building vessels specifically designed for combat was considered primitive and obsolete. Communications Officer Purple spoke hesitantly. "Captain Reed is requesting an update. They want to know if our scan is complete." Gray realized he had been staring at the data for nearly 5 minutes without speaking. This was unprecedented, a violation of contact protocol that had never occurred in his 20 years of service. "Tell them," he paused, his skin now a solid, deep purple of alarm. "Tell them the scan is complete and we thank them for their cooperation." Gray turned to face his bridge crew, all of whom were now staring at him with expressions of shock or fear, each appropriate to their species. "Send this data directly to Union Central," he said quietly. "Priority Alpha and prepare defensive systems." "Defensive systems?" echoed Navigator Blue, but immediately Gray interrupted. "But Observer First Contact Protocol specifically prohibits that." "I know the protocol," Gray said, his voice firm despite his unease. "But we have never encountered anything like humans before. Until we understand what we're dealing with, we must be cautious." On the view screen, Captain Reed waited patiently, unaware that his simple exploratory vessel had just shattered centuries of Galactic Union certainty in less than 5 minutes. The silence on the bridge of the Seeker of Truth was complete, and it was terrifying. Later, in a private analysis chamber, Observer Gray paced as he gestured at the data displays with his clasped forearms. His skin flickered between shades of purple and blue as he struggled to process what they had discovered. "Tell me again," he said to Science Officer Green in simple terms. Green adjusted her viewing apparatus and gestured to the 3-dimensional model of a human that rotated slowly in the center of the room. "These creatures, these humans, are unlike any species we've encountered. Their bodies are built for something we've never considered necessary: endurance through damage." "Explain," pressed Security Officer White, clicking his mandibles nervously. Green highlighted the human skeletal structure in the hologram. "Their bones can crack and heal multiple times. In fact, they grow stronger at the breaking points. Most Union species have bones that, once broken, remain permanently weakened." She then moved on to highlight the muscular system. "Their muscles tear and rebuild themselves stronger through a process akin to what we would call injury, but they consider it normal exercise." Navigator Blue's tentacles curled in disgust. "That's barbaric." Green continued, her voice clinical despite her obvious unease. "Their skin constantly sheds and regenerates. They bleed intentionally, release their internal fluids, and then simply stop bleeding. Their bodies create plugs called scabs to seal wounds temporarily while repairs happen underneath." Observer Gray stared at the hologram. "You're certain this isn't a defect or some form of medical condition?" No, observer, this is their standard biology. Green then highlighted the digestive system. They eat substances that would kill most of us. Their bodies contain acids strong enough to dissolve metal. And most disturbing of all, they carry billions of microscopic organisms, bacteria, viruses, fungi, in a living microbiome. Communications Officer Purple, who had joined them despite not being part of the science team, made a sound of distress. They're walking ecosystems of disease. How are they not constantly ill? Green explained, they've evolved with these organisms. They have developed systems to control, use, and fight the harmful ones. Their immune system is in a constant state of war within their bodies. The room fell silent as this information sank in. Then Security Officer White stepped forward and changed the display to show the human ship. The vessel is just as concerning as its occupants. Observer, what do you see here? Gray studied the schematic. Spacecraft engines, life support, navigation systems, nothing unusual. Look closer, White insisted. He highlighted sections throughout the ship, redundant systems everywhere, 3 separate ways to generate power, backup life support that can run at 40% capacity even if the main systems fail, and manual overrides for nearly every automated system. That's inefficient, countered Navigator Blue. No, White's mandibles clicked rapidly. It's deliberate. This ship is designed to continue functioning even when severely damaged. Look here, he said, zooming in on several sections. Armor plating is up to 3 layers thick in critical areas. Perhaps they come from a hazardous region of space. Meteor showers or radiation bursts might explain the need for such protection. White zoomed out and highlighted several points along the hull. These are weapon systems, more than would ever be needed for defense against natural phenomena. Some are obvious projectile launchers, others are concealed or integrated into the ship's design. Gray struggled to continue. They built this ship expecting to be attacked by other intelligent beings. The implications hung in the air. The Galactic Union had evolved beyond warfare millennia ago. Conflict between species had been eliminated through communication and mutual benefit. The concept of building vessels for combat was a relic of pre-Union history. There's more, Green said quietly. She touched a control, and the display changed to show readings from the human crew. Their biological responses during our scan revealed increased heart rates and the release of stress hormones, but not to levels that impaired function. They maintained complete operational efficiency under what they perceived as potential threat. They were ready to fight us, stated White flatly. Or run, added Navigator Blue. Their engines are remarkably powerful for a ship that size. Observer Gray moved to the center of the room, his skin now a solid, dark blue of deep thought. We need context, he said quietly. Perhaps they evolved on a world where such traits were necessary for survival. Not all species have had the benefit of peaceful development that Union worlds enjoyed. Or perhaps, suggested White in a low voice, they are conquerors looking for new territories. No, Gray said firmly. We cannot jump to conclusions. Captain Reed was diplomatic and cautious, not aggressive. If they meant us harm, they could have fired upon us when they detected our scan. Once again, the room fell silent as each crew member processed the information. Finally, Communications Officer Purple spoke up. Observer, Union protocol requires us to report first contact immediately to Central Command. With these findings, they will likely order a full diplomatic team. What should I tell Captain Reed in the meantime? Gray considered this carefully. The standard protocol would be to invite representatives aboard the Seeker of Truth for initial cultural exchange. But could they risk bringing these humans, these walking biological marvels of resilience and potential disease, aboard their ship? Yet, refusing such an invitation would signal distrust and could damage relations with a new species before proper dialogue began. Tell Captain Reed that we are processing their data and preparing a formal welcome, Gray decided. Request that they maintain position for 12 standard hours while we consult with Union Central. Be respectful, but give no indication of our concerns. And if they ask why the delay, Purple inquired, tell them it is standard protocol for first contact with a previously unknown species. Gray replied, "It's the truth, if not the complete truth." As the others left to carry out their tasks, Gray remained alone with the rotating hologram of the human. He studied it with a mixture of fascination and unease. What kind of world creates creatures built to endure pain, to survive damage, to carry on fighting even when injured? What history led them to build ships ready for war in a galaxy where the Union had known peace for centuries? The silence that had fallen on the bridge earlier now made perfect sense. It wasn't just shock, it was the quiet before a storm. The Union had encountered something unprecedented, and no one knew what it meant for their future. What they did know was that everything had changed. News traveled fast through the Union network. What began as a standard first contact report from a single exploratory vessel ballooned into the biggest crisis the Galactic Union had faced in 3 centuries. In the Grand Council chamber on Union Central, representatives from 17 species gathered in an emergency session. The massive room, normally orderly and quiet, buzzed with nervous conversation as colorful beings of all shapes and sizes gestured with limbs, tentacles, and appendages. As they discussed the human data, High Counselor Teal, an ancient being with skin that shimmered like polished metal, called the session to order. The room fell silent. "We have all reviewed the data sent by the Seeker of Truth," Teal said, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. "Observer Gray has discovered a new species that presents unique challenges." On the main display, images from the scan of the Defiance appeared. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as the council viewed, for the first time, the human physiology and ship design. "These humans exhibit biological and technological traits that suggest a history of conflict," continued Teal. "They appear built for warfare in ways none of us are." Representative Violet, from a species of scholars known for their rational thinking, raised a slender arm. "High Counselor, we must not rush to judgment. Many worlds evolve under harsh conditions that require adaptations, which we might misinterpret," she said. "Perhaps," said Representative Black, a bulky being covered in protective plates, "adaptations are one thing, weapons are another. Their ship bristles with them." The chamber erupted in debate. Some counselors argued for caution and diplomatic engagement, while others warned of potential danger to the peaceful Union. The discussion grew heated, even as it remained in the normally calm council. Meanwhile, aboard the human ship Defiance, Intelligence Officer Thompson monitored Union communications from his station. His dark eyes narrowed as he studied the data flowing across his screen. "Captain," he called, turning to face Reed, "I've managed to intercept and partially decode their transmissions. There's been a significant increase in communication between the alien vessel and what appears to be their central command." Captain Reed, a tall man with short gray hair and eyes that had seen more battles than he cared to remember, frowned. "What's the content?" "Hard to be certain," replied Thompson. "But they're transmitting our scanned data repeatedly. The volume suggests it's being shared widely, and I'm detecting emotional markers in their communications. If my analysis is correct, they're showing signs of fear." Chief Engineer Miller looked up from his console. "Fear of us? We haven't done anything threatening." "Sometimes just being different is threatening enough," Reed said quietly. He had seen first contact scenarios go wrong before. "Thompson, what's your assessment?" Thompson rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "The alien response seems disproportionate to a peaceful first contact. They're reacting as if we pose some kind of danger." "Why?" asked Medical Officer Park from across the bridge. "We've been completely transparent." "Maybe that's the problem," Thompson suggested. "Remember, we're built differently from most species we've encountered. Our biology, our technology, it's all shaped by Earth's history." Reed nodded slowly. "Earth, a planet where everything has evolved to compete, to survive, to fight when necessary." He turned to the main view screen, where the elegant crystalline form of the Seeker of Truth hung against the backdrop of stars. "To them, we might look like creatures bred for war." Back on Union Central, the council debate had reached a critical point. The chamber was divided, but fear was winning. "We must act decisively," insisted Representative Black. "If these humans are as adaptable and resilient as the scans show, they could spread rapidly. What happens when they discover other Union worlds? Will they see opportunities for conquest?" "There is no evidence they are conquerors," countered Violet. "We know nothing of their culture or values." High Counselor Teal raised his hands for silence. "We have a more immediate concern. The scan data has leaked beyond this council and is spreading across Union networks." On a secondary display, he showed images from various Union worlds, public gathering places where citizens were viewing the human data. Reactions varied from curiosity to horror. On one world, public services had been disrupted as citizens retreated to safety bunkers, a security measure unused for generations. "Panic is spreading," Teal said gravely. "Fear is a powerful force, and many of our citizens have never conceived of a species like humanity." "Then we must contain this situation," said Black. "I propose we dispatch a security fleet to the Seeker of Truth's location, not to attack, but to ensure these humans do not advance further into Union space until we understand their intentions." The vote was swift and decisive by a narrow margin. The Council approved Black's proposal. A defensive fleet would be mobilized immediately. On the Seeker of Truth, Observer Gray received the Council's decision with a heavy heart. His skin had turned a deep blue of concern. "They're sending a security fleet," he told his senior officers. 17 vessels, heavily armed by Union standards. "Is that necessary?" asked Communications Officer Purple. "The humans have made no aggressive moves. The Council fears what they don't understand." Gray replied, "And I'm afraid our incomplete report has fueled that fear." He added, "Security Officer White, prepare defensive measures in case the humans react badly to the arrival of the fleet." White clicked his mandibles nervously. "Observer, we must be careful. Any sign of defensive preparation might be interpreted as hostility. We must maintain open communication and transparency." Gray turned to Purple. "Contact Captain Reed. I need to speak with him immediately." On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Reed listened carefully as Observer Gray explained the situation. The alien's image on the view screen showed colors shifting rapidly, a sign of distress, Reed guessed. "Captain Reed," Gray said in a carefully controlled voice, "I must inform you that additional Union vessels are en route to our location. This is standard protocol for new contact species, but I want to assure you they come in peace." Reed and Thompson exchanged glances. They both recognized a diplomatic half-truth when they heard one. "Observer Gray," Reed replied calmly, "I appreciate your candor. However, our sensors indicate these approaching vessels are armed. Would you care to explain why peaceful contact requires weapons?" Gray's skin flashed purple briefly. "Surprise, perhaps." "Your sensors can detect our ships at that distance. We have excellent sensors," Reed said simply, "and considerable experience with situations that start peacefully and turn otherwise." A tense silence followed until Gray's skin settled into a steady blue hue. "Captain Reed, the truth is more complicated. Your scan results have caused concern among some council members. These vessels are a precaution, nothing more. I give you my word that no aggressive action is planned." Reed nodded slowly. "I understand concern about the unknown. It's a universal reaction, but observer, please convey to your council that humans also have a universal reaction to being surrounded by armed vessels. We get nervous." "What do you propose?" asked Gray. "Open dialogue, direct communication between your council and my superiors, and perhaps most importantly, patience. First impressions can be misleading," Reed suggested. In the tense silence that followed, the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. Fear had spread like wildfire through the Union, but now, faced with the calm reasoning of the very beings they feared, a flicker of doubt began to emerge. Perhaps these humans were not what they seemed after all. Within 12 hours, the Union security fleet arrived. 17 vessels of various sizes dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their crystalline hulls gleaming against the darkness of space. They moved with perfect coordination to form a hemisphere around the Defiance, leaving the route back toward Earth open. Their calculated gesture was meant to appear non-threatening while still showing force. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Reed studied the tactical display with a calm that belied the tension in the room. The human crew stood at their stations, outwardly professional but with the heightened alertness that came from years of training for exactly this kind of situation. "Quite a welcome party," Reed said dryly. Thompson, what's your Reed, intelligence officer? Thompson frowned at his console. Their formation is defensive, not offensive. They left us a clear path to retreat if we choose. But make no mistake, their positioning is for containment, as if we're some kind of disease they do not want spreading, muttered Jones, the weapons officer. Reed shot him a warning glance. Let's not assume the worst. Communications Officer Davis opened a channel to the seeker of truth. Observer Gray's image appeared on the main screen, his skin having taken on a pale yellow color that Reed couldn't interpret. Captain Reed, the alien said carefully, I see you've noticed our additional vessels. Hard to miss, Reed replied evenly. Observer Gray, I understand caution when meeting a new species, but this show of force suggests more than standard protocol. Gray's skin flashed briefly with blue patches. Then he said, Perhaps, Captain, I assure you this is merely a precaution. Our council wishes to establish proper diplomatic relations before proceeding further. Reed was about to respond when the ship suddenly rocked violently. What was that? He demanded, grabbing his chair for support. Chief Engineer Miller's voice came over the comm. Sir, we've been hit by some kind of scanning beam, much more powerful than the previous one. It's interfering with our power systems. On the largest Union vessel, the Arbiter of Peace, Commander Gold watched with horror as one of his Overa captains activated a Class 3 penetration scan without authorization. Cease that scan immediately, Gold shouted, his golden skin darkening to orange with anger. Who ordered this? Sir, replied his second-in-command, Captain Azure of the Swift Justice. I initiated the scan. I detected energy buildups in the human vessel and acted preemptively. Energy buildups? Of course there are energy buildups on a powered spacecraft, Gold repeated incredulously. Recall that scan now and put me through to Captain Azure, but it was too late. The damage was done on the Defiance. Red warning lights flashed as systems throughout the ship fluctuated under the powerful scan. They're using a military-grade scanner, reported Thompson, his fingers flying over his console. It's disrupting our shield harmonics and weapon systems. This is no scientific scan. It's a tactical probe. Divert power to stabilize affected systems. Do not, repeat, do not, target any alien vessels unless I give the direct order, ordered Captain Reed. Engineer Miller's voice came through again. Captain, that scan has knocked out power to sections 12 through 17. We have injured crew members in engineering. Reed's jaw tightened. Medical team, report to engineering. Jones, status of our defensive systems. Shields at 62% and unstable. Main weapons are offline, but our point defense grid is still operational. However, we should keep those point defenses powered down unless absolutely necessary, Reed ordered. Could still be a misunderstanding, Gray observed on the Seeker of Truth, as he watched the situation unravel in dismay. Commander Gold, your vessel Swift Justice has initiated an unauthorized aggressive scan. Gold's skin now burned an alarming shade of red. This directly contradicts Council orders for peaceful containment. I know, replied Gold, his own skin showing distress patterns. Captain Azure acted without authorization. We're attempting to disengage the scan. But a new alert sounded across all Union vessels. The tactical displays showed sudden energy spikes from the human ship. The humans are activating defensive systems, reported Security Officer White, his mandibles clicking rapidly. They're bringing weapons online. Gray's heart sank. Are you certain, Captain? He asked. Look at the readings, insisted White. Power was being rerouted throughout the Defiance, and these energy signatures matched weapon systems identified in the initial scan. In truth, the Defiance was merely rerouting power to compensate for damaged systems. However, to the inexperienced military observers of the Union, the power fluctuations appeared to be preparations for attack. Captain Azure of the Swift Justice had never seen combat. None of the Union captains had, as warfare was only studied in historical texts, not experienced firsthand. When his sensors showed energy redirections within the human vessel, his limited experience interpreted them as weapon charging. Panicking, he announced to the fleet, "The humans are preparing to fire. We must act first." Before Commander Gold could countermand the order, the swift Justice fired a warning shot, a low-power energy burst that passed close to the Defiance's bow. "Incoming!" shouted Jones as the energy burst flashed past the ship. Point defenses switched to automatic mode only upon Reed's order. "Engineering, status on main engines," he demanded. Captain Miller replied, "Engines operating at 80%. Reed made a split-second decision. "Navigation, plot a course to withdraw from this system, but execute only on my command. Communications, get me Observer Gray now." On the Seeker of Truth, Gray watched in horror as the situation spiraled out of control. The swift Justice had fired, and now other nervous captains were reporting that the human vessel was activating even more systems they didn't recognize but assumed were weapons. "We cannot let them fire first," insisted Captain Azure, his voice panicked. "The humans are preparing to fight," argued Gray desperately, "but we have no evidence they intend to attack. They could have fired back multiple times, they haven't, and that tells us something." Just then, another alarming message flashed on the tactical displays. More Union vessels were preparing to fire. On the Defiance, the human ship slowly and deliberately began to move away from the Union fleet, not in panic, but with orderly, defensive posture. In engineering, the near-miss shots had created power surges through already damaged systems. Engineer Miller and his team worked frantically to stabilize the ship's core functions. "Reroute power from Deck 5, Miller shouted, his face streaked with sweat and blood from a gash on his forehead. Johnson bypassed damaged relays in Section 19, her arm hanging uselessly at her side from a dislocated shoulder, and used her good arm to rewire a critical junction box. "Bypass complete, we're holding at 63% power," Miller confirmed grimly. Despite the injuries and chaos, the engineering team worked with practiced proficiency. Meanwhile, the Union vessels observed in disbelief as the damaged Defiance continued to function despite hits that would have crippled any Union ship. "Look at their power readings," whispered Navigator Blue on the Seeker of Truth. "How are they maintaining operation with those damage levels?" White replied grimly, "They're built for war. Their redundant systems allow them to fight even when severely damaged." Observer Gray stared at the screen as the Defiance slowly, deliberately moved away from the Union fleet, not fleeing in panic, but withdrawing in good order while maintaining defensive capabilities. "They're not attacking," he realized suddenly. "They could have fired back multiple times, they haven't." But his revelation came too late. The inexperienced and frightened Union fleet saw only a dangerous alien vessel that wouldn't go down despite their warnings. More ships were prepared to fire. In a desperate bid, Intelligence Officer Thompson made a bold decision. He had been studying the alien communication pattern since first contact and had developed a rudimentary understanding of their language structures. "Captain," he said urgently, "permission to broadcast on all frequencies using their communication protocols." Reed nodded sharply. "Do it." Thompson's fingers flew across his console. Instead of using the standard translation system, he crafted a message using the alien's own communication patterns, including the color-based emotional markers he had observed. The message streamed out from the Defiance on all frequencies, a complex pattern of data that mimicked the Union's own internal communications, embedded with color codes representing peace, truth, and understanding. Aboard the Arbiter of Peace, Commander Gold was about to order a coordinated response when his communications officer gasped. "Commander, the human ship is broadcasting in our format." The message appeared on the main screen as native Union communication glyphs and color patterns. It was imperfect, with obvious errors, but its meaning was unmistakable. "We mean no harm. We defend only, we seek understanding. Please cease fire." The emotional color markers attached to the message, colors that no non-Union species should have been able to reproduce, showed genuine concern, honesty, and a desire for peace. Gold stared at the screen in shock. How could they possibly know our emotional color language? It isn't something that can be detected in a simple scan. Observer Gray saw the same message aboard the Seeker of Truth and immediately opened a channel to Commander Gold. "They're trying to communicate directly in our language," he said urgently. "This shows intelligence and adaptability beyond anything we expected. It also demonstrates a clear desire for peace. They could have returned fire, but instead are reaching out. Gold hesitated, torn between his military training and his natural inclination toward peace. After a moment's consideration, he nodded. All vessels, stand down. I repeat, stand down. Do not fire unless fired upon. He then opened a direct channel to the human vessel. I want to speak with your captain myself. On the Defiance, Captain Reed received the communication request with cautious relief. He glanced at Thompson, who nodded. They've ordered their ships to stand down, Captain. I think our message got through. Let's hope so, Reed said as he accepted the transmission. The view screen now showed two aliens, Observer Gray, whom they recognized, and a new figure with golden skin shifting with patterns that they were beginning to understand. This new figure exuded authority and caution. Captain Reed, I am Commander Gold of the Union Security Fleet. I apologize for the unauthorized aggressive scan and subsequent actions. It appears there has been a significant misunderstanding. Reed nodded, keeping his expression neutral. Commander Gold, we understand that first contact situations are delicate. We have had our share of misunderstandings in our own history. Your officer's use of our communication patterns was unexpected. Gold continued, how were you able to decipher our emotional color language so quickly? Reed glanced at Thompson, who stepped forward. Your species communicates emotions visually through skin color changes. Once I recognized the patterns, I correlated them with your text communications. I am an intelligence officer. Understanding communication is my job. Observer Gray's skin flashed with blue and green, displaying both surprise and admiration. Remarkable adaptability. This confirms what our scans suggested about your species. And what exactly did your scan suggest? Reed asked carefully. Gold and Gray exchanged glances. That you are unlike any species we have encountered, Gold admitted. Your biology, your technology, they speak of a species familiar with hardship and conflict, which led you to assume that we are dangerous. Reed finished, yes. Gray acknowledged, many in our union feared what your differences might mean. Reed considered this for a moment before addressing Intelligence Officer Thompson. I believe it's time for some context. Thompson nodded and stepped forward. Commander Gold, Observer Gray, there's something you need to understand about humans and Earth. What your scans detected isn't the product of a warlike nature. It's the result of survival. Humanity's history on Earth is one of extreme environmental variations, powerful natural disasters, and an evolutionary history that rewarded adaptation and resilience. Our bodies heal from injury because our world constantly injures us, and our ships have redundant systems because we learned that space is unforgiving of single points of failure. We prepare for the worst not because we desire conflict, but because we have learned that survival often depends on it. For the next hour, Thompson provided context about Earth's turbulent history and the hard lessons its inhabitants had learned over millennia. The tale of human perseverance and ingenuity, born from necessity, slowly softened the stance of the Union representatives.